It's not normal to not be able to bring a baby home. It's not normal to have to leave them in a NICU. It's not normal, all of those things are traumatic, and then not being able to see them. We were in survival mode, and I didn't even realize I had PTSD or anything till I was talking to a friend, and I was like, yeah, it's every night I'm dreaming, I'm in the ceiling of that room. And she's like, Bethany, it's time. You need to go talk to someone.
Welcome to The Rainbow Connection. This podcast was designed for mothers who are finding their way through life after loss. Whether you're grieving, trying to conceive again, newly pregnant, or holding hope in your heart for what's to come, this space is for you. Each week, you'll hear real and tender stories of love, heartbreak, healing, and the babies who continue to shape us. I'm your host, Kristin Mundy, a mother, doula, and a woman who's walked this path too. May these conversations remind you that you are not alone, that your baby is never forgotten, and that hope and grief can live here together. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about Mother Like No Other, a special community for women who are navigating the tender season of life after loss. Inside Mother Like No Other, you'll find a warm, supportive space of moms who truly get it, plus practical tools to help you through the hard days. You'll have access to a private online community where you can connect with me, an experienced doula, and other moms navigating the same journey. Each month, we gather for live workshops to connect and learn, covering topics like supporting your fertility journey, grounding strategies, self-advocacy, and ways to nurture your mind, body, and soul. We also bring in guest speakers to share their expertise and inspiration. The best part? It's only $22 a month. No long-term commitment, just real support when you need it most. If you're ready to feel more grounded, connected, and held through this season, come join us at thedoulalife.ca/mother. You do not have to go through this journey alone. And by joining us inside Mother Like No Other, you won't have to. Today, I'm sitting down with Bethany Womack, a mother whose story spans recurrent miscarriage, traumatic birth, NICU stays, postpartum PTSD, and the heartbreaking loss of her son, Gabriel, at 20 weeks. Bethany shares her story with so much honesty, the kind that only can come from someone who has really lived inside deep grief and somehow clawed their way to finding hope once again. In this conversation, she walks us through the decade-long journey of growing her family, the emotional toll of navigating pregnancy after loss, and the tender moments that shaped the birth of her rainbow baby, Teddy. Love really endures, and grief transforms us. Bethany's story is a great example of that. Her story is also a great example of the courage it takes to keep on going, even when you're not sure that you can. The kind of courage that only a mother could hold. I'm so grateful to share her voice with you today. But enough from me. Let's hear from Bethany. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Rainbow Connection. Today, I am sitting down with Bethany. Hi, Bethany. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so special for you to do this for all of us.
Of course. I'm looking forward to our conversation today and getting to know your story a little bit better. Bethany's going to share more about her journey to motherhood, throughout motherhood, because she has been on a journey, and I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. But before we dive into that, Bethany, why don't you share with our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Bethany. I live in Houston, Texas with my husband, Mark. We've been here over a decade, but been in Texas my whole life. We have 3 boys here that I hold in my arms, and then one that we hold in our heart all the time. And we are done having kids now, so I've reached the end of our family growing journey, and it's been a decade, but just about. And I look back and I'm like, man, what a crazy decade.
Did we really do that?
How did we do all that? But we're here. And one of the big reasons I wanted to come on here is I feel like one of my big goals in life is to try to find ways for joy and grief to coincide, and what that looks like in, the post-baby era of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I would have had something like this to listen to along the way when we were in the thick of it. So
Mm-hmm.
happy to
Mm-hmm.
be here and share.
Yeah, I'm so glad. And I want to, like I said, I want to hear all about it. So why don't you start wherever feels good to
Yeah.
you?
So I want to preface, like, each of my boys that I have, the 3 that I have and the one that I hold in my heart, each of them were rainbow babies. Like, they had an early loss before each of those pregnancies. And recurrent loss was kind of something I didn't really think happened to people. Like, I knew it happened to people, but it's supposed to happen to 1 in 100 people, not 1 in 1 people, which was something that I learned throughout the journey, was that statistics don't really mean anything when you're the one of the statistic. So my first pregnancy was a loss, and then I got pregnant pretty soon after with my son, Bowen, and he just turned 8. Crazy age. But it was a pretty normal pregnancy until it wasn't, and my blood pressure started creeping up. And the next thing I knew, I am seeing a new OB. I'm 32 weeks pregnant, and he comes in a room and he's like, "You're way more sick than you think you are. You're going to the hospital today." At this point, I didn't even, I had heard of the term preeclampsia, but I didn't really know what it was. My blood pressure at home was 160 over 110. And I was like, oh, I'm stressed because my husband isn't home. Like, it would be normal if he was here. But we wind up going to the hospital, and within 2 days, he has to be born at 33 weeks and 0 days. And in the process of his induction, his placenta started to detach, so we had to have an emergency C-section. And then he was born and he was fine. But then within 6 hours, I was severely hemorrhaging. And so I had to have 2 subsequent surgeries to stop the hemorrhaging from the birth. And all of my memories from that period of time are all out of body, which I had heard that phrase before, but to actually experience, like, as I'm reliving it, like, I'm just seeing everything from the ceiling, kind of. Extremely, terrifying period of time to look back on. When, I felt like I was dying. And eventually, at one point, they were like, we might have to do a hysterectomy, and we didn't. And eventually, they got the bleeding to stop, and I was there for a few more days. And then I'm healing from all of that, and we have a NICU baby he was in the NICU for 22 days. And while he's in the NICU, Hurricane Harvey hit Texas, which flooded Houston, half of Houston. And our house was fine, thankfully, and the hospital was fine, thankfully, but we couldn't get to the hospital for 3 days because we were kind of on an island and all the roads were flooded. And so I'm watching my NICU baby while I'm pumping in a laundry room at my house because there's tornado warnings. And I'm just talking to nurses on the phone, like, how's he doing? How's it going? And I do want to say, these are nurses who also have left their families to be there and work, It was a really hard time. And then we got him home. And the next year, I did a lot of therapy, a lot of work to process the postpartum PTSD that I developed from that.
Well, I'm sure it must have felt impossible to be separated from your baby, right?
It's not normal to not be able to bring a baby home. It's not normal to have to leave them in a NICU. It's not normal, all of those things are traumatic. And then not being able to see them, I think probably especially after having a miscarriage, felt just so heavy, Yeah. And we were in survival mode, and I didn't even realize I had PTSD or anything till I was talking to a friend, and I was like, yeah, it's every night I'm dreaming, I'm in the ceiling of that room. And she's like, Bethany, it's time. You need to go talk to someone. And I was like, oh, that's for me.
This isn't, I guess this isn't normal. It is a normal response, but it's something we need to kind of pay some attention to this, give it some love.
Yeah. And I think that, nothing flags on any of the postpartum appointments because I wasn't extremely depressed or I was functioning. And I thankfully wasn't dealing with a lot of super high anxieties about my baby, but it was me, But so went through a lot of work in therapy, really processing that work, processing my birth story, and getting into a place where I felt like safe where I could try to have another baby because I had always envisioned this big family. When my husband and I were dating, I told him I wanted 4 kids and he said 2. And so in my mind, I was always like, well, that means I'll get 3 because,
Mm-hmm.
half and half.
That's me in the middle. Yeah.
We'll split it. But it took a lot more work than I was prepared for it to do. Because at first it's like, I can't do that again. Like we're just going to only have one. And it was about 2 years until the point where I was like, okay, I can do this again. And I had another early loss. And I was like, remember crying to the midwife and being like, this wasn't supposed to happen again. I thought people only had
Mm-hmm.
one. Like, you're only supposed to have one. And she was like, it can happen again, da 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 da. And so, we do what we do and we get through that. And then COVID hits, and then I get pregnant with my second son, Jack. And a lot of my trauma from Bowen's birth had to do with the way in which he entered the world and the trauma I experienced afterwards. And I hated the feeling of the C-section, and I couldn't feel any of my body, and I was scared. And so I had done a lot of work in therapy to process all that, but was also doing the mental work. Like I was pretty determined I wanted to try to Tolac for Jack because I just wanted to feel like I was in as much control as I could be. I think that's probably what all moms want what every human wants for every aspect of their life is to be able to be in control. And birth is so much of this push and pull of holding on to what you can control, but then relinquishing what you can't and opening yourself up to that. And, but I just,
For those who are listening, Tolac is a trial of
you.
labor after cesarean. Yeah. So it sounded like you ideally would love to have, were you wanting to get a VBAC or were you wanting just to see?
Yeah, I really wanted a VBAC and I really wanted an unmedicated VBAC, not because I get for me, the reason I really wanted that was because I didn't like the way the drugs felt for the C-section because it had all happened so fast. The first time I felt very out of control and very out of my own body. And so that was a main driving factor to wanting a VBAC. And I would always call it Tolac in my head because I didn't want to go in being like, if I don't get a VBAC, I have failed. So I kept saying, I am going to Tolac because I could control Tolacing. I could control trying the trial of labor. I couldn't control how it would end. But so I got a doula, did all these classes, and really, once I hit 33 weeks and I'm 34 weeks, I was like, this is strange. Never been this pregnant before. 35 weeks, I was like, are we sure he should still be in there? Like, I know he's okay. And they're like, you're fine. Your blood pressure's fine. Kept going. And I went into labor on my own at 38 and a half weeks, went to the hospital and had a baby 5 hours later. And it was really just the most beautiful and redemptive experience that I had my entire baby making journey. And one I'm really forever thankful that I got to have that moment that made me believe in my body again, in a way that I had a hard time before, I guess.
Sure.
And so, like a lot of women, I think, who give birth, I was like, people do that again? That was intense. But then, within 2 hours, I was like, oh, I'm not done.
I think you either have, especially if it's an unmedicated birth, you're just like, wow, like that. It just kind of opens the world to a whole new high, right? And a lot of the time, my unmedicated birthing mothers are like, I need to do that again. That was the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life. And it really is a different world, right?
Yeah. And my husband laughs at me because, I go from screaming at the midwives to cut him out of me and her being like, girl, we're past that. The only way out is through, which is a motto that I told myself a whole lot over the last decade. To even after he was right out being like, that was a mistake. Should have gotten some meds. That was a mistake. To literally 2 hours later being like, I am Superwoman. That was amazing. So when Jack was about 9 months old, we got pregnant again unexpectedly. And that pregnancy was over almost just as quick as we found out, about 5 weeks or so. But what it did for me was really solidify that I wanted another kid. And what it really did for my
Mhm.
husband was solidify the fact that he didn't. And he didn't
Mm.
want to do that again. And now, years later, and a rainbow baby later, I have a lot more grace for the way he was feeling in that moment. I can look
Mhm.
back on the situation and be like, he was terrified. He had just almost
Yeah.
watched me die having the first one, and then spent the entire pregnancy of the second one just walking on eggshells, fearful, just to have it end really positively. And he's just like, why would we touch the hot stove again? That
Mhm.
that would be insane. Let's end on the high note. We're good.
Mhm.
Um,
We have 2 beautiful
yes.
boys, healthy, let's count our blessings.
Yes. Which, of course, I was not prepared to accept that answer. But and so we were kind of like, okay, I just kept being like, okay, well, don't get a vasectomy right now. Like, we're not, like, this isn't it. Don't make it a permanent decision. We'll decide. And so we kind of talked about a year out. And literally 3 weeks later, after that 5-week miscarriage, I got pregnant with Gabe, who's like the
Oh, wow.
baby, yeah, I hold in my heart. And to say it was a whirlwind is a bit of an overstatement. I, it really, I don't even know if there's words to just like encapsulate all that we were feeling in those moments, because it was almost kind of like we're in the middle of this big fight about what we want and what we want for our future. And then we just got accidentally pregnant twice. Like, what kind of idiots are we? Is kind of like what I felt like. Uh,
A plus B equals baby.
yeah. And it's like, I'm a smart
Mhm.
person. I tried for a long
Mhm.
time for the other two. Um,
Mhm.
but like, life is what it is. And that's how it was. And it was almost one of those things, like, we didn't even realize it was a new pregnancy. We thought the HCG wasn't coming all the way down from the other pregnancy. And so it was just very much like we were probably both very emotionally guarded, like, well, there's no sense in processing this till we know if baby's going to stick anyway,
Mhm.
which is probably a feeling a lot of lost moms have, lost parents
Totally.
have. Yeah. And, you know, saw the ultrasound, saw a heartbeat, and then got the NIPT results back, which is the genetic testing, and everything was in the clear. It was another boy, um, which my husband is the youngest of 4 boys, and so, like, just the thought that he has these 3 boys, and my 3 boys, and da 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 was, really special to him too, and the thought that they would grow up like how he grew up. And then it kind of felt like, in my mind, I was kind of like, well, I guess we're kind of in the clear, like, I'd never had a loss past that point for sure.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden, I guess I'm in my second trimester. Things are pretty fine. Like, I'm busy taking care of the other boys. The pregnancy felt like it was going a lot faster than normal. Um, and life was just intense. Mark was in London for 3 weeks for work, and I'm at home, and our boys passed the flu back and forth to each other. COVID's still going around. Um, and at this point, I'm working like 20-ish hours a week and watching the kids with part-time childcare. And then
Life's busy.
yeah, it was an intense time. And
Mhm.
I can remember feeling movement and feeling like, oh, this is good. Like, we're good. I'm feeling movement. And then somewhere around 17 weeks, I remember being like, I'm not showing as much as I was in previous pregnancies. And I was even comparing pregnancy pictures and sent it to my doula. And she's like, yeah, that is kind of interesting. Maybe he's just positioned way differently. But she's like, why don't you call the midwife? So I called the midwife, and she's like, sure, come in, because they know my history. They know all my losses. They're really great about all that. Anytime I needed to come in for extra reassurance, they would let me. And so I go in at 18 weeks for an ultrasound, because I was like, I feel like I'm feeling less movement. And to which the response is like, it's too early, for you to feel consistent movement. This isn't the point where we're going to count kicks or anything. And I go in, and she was like, he's just positioned really low. Looks like he's a little sleepy right now. But he's good. He's fine. And I have gone back and reread those notes from that appointment so many times because I don't remember seeing movement and like I don't clock in my head seeing his heartbeat, but the notes say she did. So obviously she did. Like, she saw movement, she saw heartbeat. He was fine. She's like, he's just sleepy. Babies have different temperaments. He's just low. He's positioned low.
Mhm.
And so, I was like, okay, but I left freaking out. And just being like, it does not, like, something's wrong. I cried to my friend on the phone, and what is anybody going to say? You know, they're like, you just
They're
left.
gonna say, "Everything's okay. You're gonna be fine."
And
A lot
honestly,
of that,
like,
right?
what would I have said to myself? Like if my friend called me in that moment, like, I don't know, maybe I could have like tweaked the wording and like validated their concern a bit more. But, at that point, there's really nothing to do but hope for the best.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
trust the process. And so then around 19 weeks or so, my husband and I went to see Hamilton. The touring show was in Houston. And I say this because it's like I look back now and it's one of my favorite things that I'm glad I got to do with Gabe, that he was with me for. Like, I love that show. I love that he got to hear it, maybe, or was there physically with me. And I can remember feeling movement there because I remember like making a mental note, like, oh, he likes Hamilton too, and this is great. And I got another little Broadway baby, and that's wonderful. And so that was around 19 weeks. And then at 20 weeks and 5 days, I had my anatomy scan. And the night before the anatomy scan, I'm still feeling really icky. I had been Googling stuff like, is it normal to not feel movement for your third pregnancy at 20 weeks? All these things. Told my husband, I was like, I'm really worried we're going to go in and they're going to say, like, oh, he doesn't have any legs or something, Because I was like, I'm just
Mhm.
not feeling him move. And Mark had been like, stop saying that. Like, we're going to go
Mhm.
in and we're going to find out. And so we go into the appointment and we walk into the room, and I can remember Mark telling the tech, hey, we've had a few early losses. Please let us know that you see a heartbeat. Things are fine when you see him. That we know you can't say much, but please just tell us that. Because the anatomy scan was at a different like MFM clinic, not with a doctor I'd seen before. And she kind of says, okay, but then she starts scanning and she's doing the, doot, doot, doot. I'm going to measure. I'm not going to talk to you at all. And I remember being like, this is weird. I was like, maybe she's just young and she doesn't really know how to interact with patients or honor our requests that we just said this or can't or
Mhm.
whatever. And then they have the big screen in the room where you can see things. And at the exact same moment, this had been like, I don't know, 5 minutes, it felt like, into the scan. You can see his foot up there. They're like on his little foot. And at the exact same moment, Mark looks up and he's like, oh my gosh, it's his little foot. Oh my gosh, he's a little person, And look, he's got a foot. And at that exact same moment, I saw the measurements on the side of the screen. And one of them said like 17 weeks. One of them said 18 weeks. And at this point, I'm almost 21 weeks pregnant. And so I'm like, something is wrong, you know?
Mhm.
And so at this point, I tell Mark, I'm like, something's wrong. Those measurements are off. I'm like starting to panic. And the tech looks at me and says, um, I'm going to go get the doctor. We'll be right back. And I swear to you, it was
Mm.
15 minutes before someone walked through that door. And we're just sitting, awful, awful. And we're sitting in there, and I feel like Mark was holding on to more hope than I was holding on to because
Mm.
I think it just like, you just know, like,
Well, and that's what a partner does, right?
yeah.
They are trying to support you through this, and they are the people who we're clinging on to be our hope, right?
Yes, yes. That's why we love them in those
Mhm.
moments. And I'm trying to be like, kind of prepare him that I think he's gone.
Mhm.
And I can remember Mark saying, this doesn't have to be it. Like we can do this again. And me saying like, don't say that, like this can be it. Which I think I look back now as a really beautiful moment of us both just loving each other so much that we wanted to give each other what the other person needed, you know?
Mhm. Mm.
And the doctor comes in and says, I'm sorry, your baby doesn't have a heartbeat. And Mark says, "Can you check it again?" And he says, "Sure." He pulls up the thing and starts showing us some things and tells us, I think he's been gone for a couple of weeks. At which point I'm just kind of like very defiant, which is not normal for me in medical situations. But I was like, I just had an ultrasound at 18 weeks and he was alive and I just felt movement and da 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 da. And he was like, he's gone. Like he's been gone. Um, and that like there's like it's split the before and after of our lives, I think.
Totally.
Yeah. And then this MFM who I've, never met before starts talking to us about options. And I guess the realization hit me that this baby has to be born. Like he has to come out of me in some
Mm.
way. And my other losses had been early and I'd done them at home and, varying degrees of difficult, but over quickly. And all of a sudden I was just very overwhelmed. Um, he said, you can go to labor and delivery right now next door at your hospital and you can be induced and have this baby and your midwives can be with you, or you can have a D&E. But then he starts saying like, but if you want that option, you're going to have to find somebody that will do it for you. And I was like, what? And he goes on to explain that, the hospital where we delivered our last baby and we were planning on having this baby, they don't allow D&Es at their hospital. Um,
Because you're in Texas? Is
yeah,
that why?
yeah.
Yeah.
And girl,
We're in Canada, so it's so different here. It's very different than Texas.
yeah. And you know, I try not to get too worked up politically about things, but this is a real example that I'll talk to people about how laws affect people, and in ways that you don't think that they might not be affected. Um, so it took 2 days. Well, let me back up and explain how we came to the decision of which route to go. Leaving my husband was very much like, I would like to do the surgery. He said, I don't want to go in that room. I have watched you give birth to 2 other boys, and it was scary, and I don't want to do that again. And he's like, I don't think I can. And he's like, and I don't think it's as safe of a decision for you because the doctor had also explained that when people have babies in their second trimester, a lot of times they'll still have to have a D&C to clean out the placenta because it'll get retained. And I have this history of postpartum hemorrhage. Um, and in those moments, I was very much like, I can't make decisions. I can't think clearly. And he's saying this is what he needs and this is what I'm going to give him. And very much, I think that's what I also wanted had I and I mean, I'm years removed now and I look back on that decision happy with the decision. But it was a very hard decision in the moment to decide in which way are we going to bring this baby out. And I remember I was in like a rainbow baby support group on Facebook. And I remember asking someone like, how do you know? And it was flooded with comments of people saying, I delivered my baby and I held them and it was really peaceful and it gave me a lot of closure. And then a mom named Lindsay sent me a message and she was like, hey, I just want you to know, like, it is okay if you decide to do the D&E. It doesn't make you any less of a mom to this baby. It doesn't mean you loved this baby any less. It means you're doing what you need to do to protect your heart, to protect your husband right now in this moment, and to physically do what you need to do so that you're the safest you can be for your 2 boys that you have, that you get to hold in this life. And, uh,
Yeah, I mean, everyone comes to that choice with their own history and their own, factors. And a huge factor is your family and like what's best for your whole unit. And it's not as simple as people think that decision really is.
yeah, um, and in that moment, that permission from her,
Huge.
it helped me so much. I'm Facebook friends with her to this day. Never met her. Don't even talk to her a whole lot anymore. I should send her a message after this and be like, "You have no idea like what you did for me in that moment." Um, but our stories were very similar, and like she had 2 living boys when she had her losses, and she's like, "There are other ways to help you get closure if you need it."
Mhm.
Um, and so I, you know, want to validate and like honor however people decide to move forward when they're faced with the unimaginable decision like that. Um, but so then once we made the decision that that's what we wanted to do, because we are in Texas, it was hard to figure it out. It took 2 days before I could have the surgery. My midwives had to find a doctor that did it, and I've since talked to some medical professionals, and they're like, 2 days is actually very quick here.
Yeah, like sometimes even in Canada where you like I'm in Ontario outside
Mhm.
of the GTA, and even here 2 days is quick, and pretty much every obstetrician does it here. So, um yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they were the longest 2 days of your life, right?
Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
nothing prepares you for walking around holding death inside of your body, you know? It's a feeling that I resonate with a lot now that we're all done and I've had all of these losses and all of this and my 3 boys that I get to hold where I'm like, my body has just really held so much life, but also so much death, you know? And trying to really frame that in my head of being like, how lucky am I that they got to be with me. I got to be with them, you know, the entirety of his life, you know? Um, but yeah, it was incredibly hard. And so they find this doctor, and it's at a hospital that, I've never been to. It's with a doctor I've never met. He's over 80 years old.
My gosh.
um, the sweetest man who I know nothing about his life, but I have all this supposition in my head based on pictures I saw in his doctor's office of what I think his life is like. um, in that classic like traumatized person that tries to just like make narratives.
Makes Yeah, makes sense of what's happening. Yeah, yeah. Whatever helps you get through though, right?
Yes.
You kinda have to do that, so
Yeah, so in my mind, he's this nice little widower that still he doesn't deliver babies anymore, but he still had patients. He's in his 80s. He was really an angel in my life, I feel like,
I'm
because
sure he's seen a thing or two,
yeah,
since becoming an obstetrician.
yeah, and gave me and my husband what we needed in that moment. And so we went in the night before. You have to do dilators before you do that surgery. So you go in and they place something in the cervix to kind of ripen it, open it, and then you go the next day for surgery. Um, and we went for the surgery. I'm getting checked in and they're doing the IVs and stuff. And my body is in full PTSD panic back to Bowen's birth because that was the last time I had an IV. Last time I had an IV, they gave me 5 liters of blood. And so kind of wrapped up in that then like I'm about to go back for surgery and it hits me that like I'm never going to have Gabe physically with me anymore, you know?
Mhm.
And I asked the nurse, I said, "Hey, before we start, can I go to the restroom by myself?" And she said, "Sure." So I go to this hospital bathroom and I'm in there and I lost it, like
Mm.
emotionally, you know? And I'm like trying to tell him goodbye and all the things that you want to tell him, like so many I'm sorries. And then I just laid on the cold bathroom floor, like just feeling the cold on my face, like feeling like it somehow tethered me to life. Somehow, it's like hard to explain, but it's like what grounded me.
Mhm. Just froze time for a moment.
Yes. To
Mhm.
this day, I don't really have a whole lot of memory. I don't know how I got up off the bathroom floor and onto the surgery table. I don't know if Mark came in and got me. Um, I don't know if a nurse came and got me. I don't know if I got up myself, but I got on the
It
bed.
ha
It
it
happened.
happened.
Yes. Which is a point I come back to a lot to draw strength on. I think that, like, I got up off that floor. Like, I
Mhm.
said goodbye, I got up off that floor, I went and did the surgery, and, told the doctor he had amazing hair, which he did. His beautiful, white, full head of hair, and, said goodbye to our boy.
You did the hardest thing. You did. You got off that floor.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
While we take a quick break, I want to introduce you to The Haven, my signature support program for mothers who are pregnant again after miscarriage, TFMR, stillbirth, or infant loss. This is not just a course. The Haven is a trauma-informed community program that includes weekly live workshops, expert guest speakers, and ongoing support from me, an experienced doula and fellow loss mom, anytime you need it. You'll also receive one-on-one check-ins, guided journaling prompts, full access to my birth course, Reclaim, and a warm, intimate community of other PAL mothers, a place where you can be real, be held, and be reminded that you are not alone in this. Enrollment inside the Haven is now open, and support is available to walk with you throughout your entire pregnancy. From the moment you see those 2 pink lines, all the way until your baby is tucked safely into your arms. If you've been longing for a place to feel safe, feel seen, and be supported throughout your pregnancy, then the Haven was made for you. You can learn more at thedoulalife.ca/haven. Inside the Haven, your baby is remembered, your voice is honored, and you are fully supported every step of the way.
What did life kind of look like, on the other side?
A whole lot of bathroom floor.
Yeah.
No, but in reality, we had 2 little boys at home at the time. Bowen was 4 and a half. And Jack was 1 and some change, but, we had to tell Bowen that his brother wasn't coming. And he's 4 and a half, and they don't fully understand death and the concept of death or any of that. And so that was extremely hard. And I can remember sitting them on the couch and where we were on the couch when we told them, and we kept telling them, like, mommy's safe, but something didn't work with your baby brother's heart and it stopped beating. And so we don't get to bring him home. He's not going to come home. He's not coming anymore. He died. And, also, I guess it didn't help, like, we had no answers, which so many lost moms just don't, like, we did what testing we could, but, all the genetic stuff looked normal. We just didn't know. And to explain that to a kid is also hard. But so what would happen was, for the next month, it was like his 4-year-old brain was just trying to process. And so he would just ask again, and be like, he called the baby Bookie because we didn't have a name for Gabe at that. Like, we named Gabe after he was born between one of our final names. But so Bone had been calling him Bookie, and he'd be like, Bookie died? Bookie's not coming? Bookie's not in your stomach? And I'd be like, no. And he'd be like, oh, but he can come back. And I'd be like, no, he's going to live in our hearts. And
well, he probably just, being 4 years old and having a little 4-year-old brain, he probably just understood the concept of having a brother.
yeah.
Like, mommy's bringing home a baby. So that must have been a lot, in addition to saying goodbye to Gabe, but a lot to have those conversations with your baby at home. And yeah, that must have been exceptionally hard.
And I've had, a few moms that I've talked to since that also had losses at similar times. And I think loss is hard no matter what your situation at home is. When I lost Gabe, I had living children that I could wrap in my arms and gave me a lot of comfort, and also required a lot of presence of me, And so I felt like in some ways I didn't have time to grieve, but would I would live separate lives. Like, I would get
Mhm.
up during the day and I would take care of my boys, and then they would go to bed, and then I'd go into grief Bethany, where I would
Mhm.
lay on the bathroom floor where the cold tile would hit my face and it would pull me back to reality. I would go and spend time with Gabe's box in my closet and try to make the pieces kind of make sense, you know?
Mhm.
And one thing that took, you know, I guess around the year mark after we lost Gabe, it felt like I was putting societal pressures on myself not to outwardly present sad anymore. Like it just felt socially unacceptable to still be grieving.
Mhm.
Um, but I still had all these feelings and I still wanted to feel all these feelings. And my therapist had told me about this term called glimmers, which is kind of like the opposite of triggers. So like something triggers you to be really sad. A glimmer is something that gives you a glimmer of hope, a glimmer of joy, a glimmer of love, like something that triggers your happiness. And so I was trying to be really intentional, especially when I was with the boys, to look for the glimmers, look for the happy moments. And one of the ones that this sounds so silly, but it's like the way the light would come through the windows in our house. I'm a photographer, and so I see light everywhere, and when light makes a pretty pattern, I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. I love this light. And so that would be a glimmer that I would hold on to. But then what I started doing was when I would have these glimmers, I would intentionally like let myself feel and bring in the feelings of grief, of sadness, of loss that I had about Gabe so that like they could be together. So I'd be like looking
Mhm.
at this beautiful light and started thinking of it in my mind of like a beautiful light Gabe was in my life,
Mhm.
as a way to like let myself still feel without having to hide in the closet, without having to be on the bathroom floor, without having to hide all the things
Mhm.
inside me. And eventually it kind of I did just become more comfortable with like sitting with both. And that doesn't mean that I smile through every time I think of Gabe, like no, I still feel sad, but it lets me feel both.
Mhm.
The concept of holding joy and grief in your heart at the same time is not revolutionary. It's not a choice. Like everyone, I think, who's experienced loss has to do that. But it does, I think, take a lot of intentional practice and making yourself
Mhm.
sit in it instead of running from it to be able to comfortably hold them both.
Mhm.
To where you're not fighting yourself all the time.
Well, and you can only run away for so
Yeah.
long, right? Because it's gonna come find you. You
Yeah.
can't like push this away. You can't make it unreal. It's real
Yeah.
and it needs to be felt. Yeah. Yeah. So you know, what did the rest of those days look like for you guys? I know like after loss, some of us, I know you and your husband finally came to this like loving and compassionate agreement with each other, wanting to like give each other the gift of what each other wanted. Where did you guys kind of land with more family planning? Was that something that you wanted to do, or is that something that seemed really like scary for you?
In the initial days, it was too scary to even talk about or think about. Um, and initially, we were just like, okay, we're not making any permanent decisions. We're going to do better about some birth control, like about our methods of birth control, but we're not making any permanent decisions. And I think kind of three things had to happen in order for us to get to a place where we tried again. That was eventually where we got was like, for one, I needed all the medical answers I could get. I needed to know what
Mhm.
happened. I needed to find a new team. I needed to know exactly what a new pregnancy would look like. Number two, I needed to feel emotionally ready. And then number three, Mark and I had to be on the same page. And each of those things took a lot of intentionality. Um, it was very scary. And so what I did was I started with the medical one because while finding answers is actually hard, doing the things to find the answers felt easier than doing any of the emotional work for me.
Mhm.
Um, so I went to a new OB. She sent me to a new MFM who was just this is an amazing human being, also a grandpa aged MFM who's been practicing medicine in Texas for 50 years, who sat with me for an hour and a half, combing my medical records, looking at every single obstetric history event I had had, and every piece of testing I had done to try to get me answers, which of course we came to like, we don't really know. Like,
Mm.
we think it could be, like Gabe could have been a blood clotting thing. He could have died because of a neurovirus, any of the things, but we don't know. And he kept saying like, you're going to have to be in a place where it's okay that you don't know, uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
which to this day, maybe I'm still not fine with. I don't know. But it's just one of those things we'll never know in life.
Yeah. But you still needed to go through that process of like
Hmm.
doing your best, right? And leaving no stone unturned, because I think if you don't do that, sometimes you go back being like, should I have turned that stone over there? Or even if it didn't give me an answer, at least I know I
Yeah.
did it. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And even though I had had 3 other losses besides Gabe, I had never done like the full repeat loss panel because I had gotten pregnant again so quickly after each loss, and then had healthy babies, so they were like,
Mhm.
we don't think there's a chromosome issue and da 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 da. So we did all that blood work and kind of all of that. And this MFM walked me through. He was like, in your future pregnancies, he's like, you can come see me as much as you need to see me. He was just uh, felt like the emotional safety and security of the mom was paramount in a pregnancy, which I a lot of providers, especially like the way our medical system works and they're so tied to insurances, they don't have that luxury, They
Mhm.
need to see so many patients and get them in and out. And to have this person be like, I've got you. Like, I am here. I will come in, all of these things. This is what the pregnancy will look like. I will be the one that does your scans. I will be the one telling you immediately you're never going to sit in a room with a ultrasound picture and not know what's going on. Um, that
It's a
would
game
never
changer.
happen. Yes. So I was
Yeah.
like, uh, he's amazing. It was what I needed.
Yeah. Well, it's the kind of care that I think every mom
Yeah,
really deserves, right?
for
But
sure.
unfortunately, it's the same in Canada too. Like those appointments are usually rushed and things are missed, right? A lot of the time things are missed
Yeah.
and you don't get that kind of compassionate um maternal mental health focus kind of care,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the emotional work to get where I needed to be. I did all this work with my therapist and she was wonderful helping me process. And like every loss before, I would come to a place where the fear of not trying felt bigger than the fear of trying and losing again. And what I kept telling myself was, I got off that bathroom floor. Like, I can get off the bathroom floor if I lose another baby, just like I lost Gabe. Like, I did that once. I know I can do it again. I've got these tools. What I didn't feel prepared to deal with was being 50, 60, and looking back with regret. I was like, I don't want to do that. Um, and so then we got to step 3, which was getting me and Mark on the same page. And that was hard and required, like, we went to marriage counseling to try to talk through
Mhm.
it, or to talk through it. And w- one of the big reasons I wanted to be able to do this podcast is that I didn't find anyone in my life who I could talk to who had lived through that, where the decision of whether or not to try for a rainbow was like also wrapped up in how many kids do you want in your family, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it felt impossible because, like, a compromise where we split a Hershey bar or whatever. There's no halfway to a baby. Like,
no, it's so different. It's life-changing, right? Like, you're
yes.
literally permanently, no matter what the outcome is, whether you bring the baby home
Yeah.
or you don't,
Yeah.
it's changing your family. It's making a decision that changes your family forever.
Yeah. And it
I
was
was gonna say, I get it on a personal
okay.
level, big time.
Yeah. And one of us would lose. Like, it is a zero-sum game, or one of us gets our way and one of us doesn't, basically. And now, like, through the therapy and all of that, I was able to understand that he wasn't coming to this place and saying, like, I don't want another kid because he didn't want to change diapers, or because, he didn't want to buy 3 extra plane tickets instead of 2, even though, like, no one likes to be up in the middle of the night taking care of a baby. Like, I get it, like, raising a baby is hard,
It is hard.
and valid. Living through it right now, like, it's difficult.
And pregnancy's hard,
Yes.
even for your partner, because
Yeah.
it's hard for everybody, right?
Yeah. Like,
Mhm.
at the core of it, that wasn't, like, he wasn't denying a 3rd kid because he didn't want to change a diaper. He wanted me alive, like, he wanted me emotionally stable. He wanted me, he wanted the wife that he married, which, like, that person doesn't exist anymore. Like, I think we all know that. Like, we're not the same person. But, he had watched me bleed out. He had watched me come back from that and fight the PTSD. All the while, like, I think we don't always fully appreciate, like, the trauma that partners experience in all of this. But it was a hard time, and the thought of risking all of that again just felt too heavy for him. Meanwhile, I'm just getting, like, more angry and more angry. Like, I feel like there's this person that belongs with us that I can feel and that I just know that I will regret. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to be like if I'm 50 and I didn't try, and all of these things. And kind of through therapy, we came to the conclusion that without me having to do a whole lot more work to get over this, we needed to be in a place where Mark wasn't the one telling me that no, that it was outcomes telling me no, or science, or, whatever. So we agreed on 3 more tries, basically. And in the moment, my personal therapist was like, I don't know that it's a great idea to put a number on how many times you're going to try. Like, that doesn't sound super healthy. And I don't love it even today, and like that kind of thought process behind it. But it's what he needed in the moment, like, he needed to know there's an end date.
Well, men are so much more, like, concrete and factual and, like,
Mhm.
planned, right? Like, they need to, like, see something.
Yeah.
It's just such a different experience for them. And this just shows how different it is by even putting a number on it. I totally get it, because I feel like a very similar conversation could happen in our house too. So
To this day, I feel like icky even, like, talking about the actual number, because I was and it was three times, like, but, like, the idea of even, like, being in that place also felt like a lot of pressure, because I had had a lot of
Mhm.
early losses, and what happens then?
I think though when you want a baby, I think you're constantly asking yourself, like, how much more I can handle. So it does make sense. Like, could I handle? I could handle that, but I couldn't handle that. And, like, an outsider might be like, that sounds really bizarre. But when you've gone through loss, when you have your heart's been broken and your family has, like, kind of gone through the fire, it's not going to make sense to them. But uh, there's probably a lot of women right now listening and, like, nodding their heads. Like, I totally get it. Yeah.
Well, and had you asked me before I ever got pregnant the first time, hey, if it takes you 5 losses to get to your 3 babies, do you think you're gonna, like, are you gonna keep going? And I'd be like, no. How can anybody keep
Mhm.
going?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but here we are, like,
Mhm.
we can do the hard things. Um, so we make this agreement and kind of put some time frames on it. And it also looks like Mark's doing a lot of personal therapy too to help process the trauma that he lived through, and me continuing to do that work. And it's hard work. It's not fun to like go to therapy every week and cry about your dead baby that you didn't get to bring home and all of that. But it's helpful and it's necessary so that I was the best mom I could be to my living boys and the best wife I can be, and all of that, and to kind of help get me in the best frame of mind for moving forward to try again. So, we finally agreed, like, okay, this is what it's going to look like, and we're going to try again. And our first try, not like the first month or whatever, but like we got pregnant again in that first out of 3 tries. Got a heartbeat and everything. And then at 8 weeks found no heartbeat, which looked different than any of my other losses before. The other early ones, I had never seen a heartbeat other than Gabe. And so this was kind of a weird spot to be in. And that pregnancy loss is the only pregnancy loss that we've ever had a definitive answer for, which in and of itself was very healing for me. But so I had a D&C for that one, and they tested the embryo and it had a trisomy that was incompatible with life. And it gave me a lot of peace about that specific little life, and that embryo. And to just have a reason. But it also gave me some clarity that I still had more grief work that I needed to do for Gabe. Because in those moments, I wasn't crying for losing that pregnancy. I was crying because, like, I wanted Gabe, I didn't. And that's what I was, even in therapy, I was like, I feel bad. I feel so guilty because, like, I don't want another baby. Like, I want him. I felt him. He was in me. I grew him. Like, he's supposed to be with me. And so the loss happened in October, and we decided, we just need some time, like take some time. I don't want to be pregnant through the holidays. I need to kind of recenter. And we hadn't told anyone about that pregnancy. And to the point where Mark was traveling for work again when I needed the D&C. And so I called my niece, it's like my sisters, and I'm like, hey, I need you to take off work because I need you to take me to the hospital for a D&C. And she's just like, Bethany, like, oh my gosh. I think and Mark felt like we just, we went through year 1 of grieving Gabe, where it felt like in the beginning we had a lot of support, but then people just don't know how to continue to support you, I guess, where it just kind of felt like we were on an island in a lot of ways. And then it was just like, we're not telling anyone, like, we're not letting anyone into this hurt anymore. Like, we can't trust that, like, we just need to protect ourselves. And so we, like, hadn't told anyone, basically. And so we get through the holidays, and then at this point, like, I had like some really weird period stuff going on where it took a long time for my period to come. I thought it might have been a chemical. It wasn't. Got scanned, wasn't an ectopic, all these things, just my cycle's kind of off. And then at this point, my OB was like, hey, I'm support you every pregnancy you have. Maybe you should go to a fertility clinic to have some stuff looked at if you're serious about these chances you have left, And so I did. But then sitting in the fertility clinic, like, they do all the other testing and things. And I had a doctor look at me and say, listen, you have 3 genetically normal boys. One you didn't get to bring home, but they're genetically normal. He's like, I don't know how many you have to get through, but we can get you through to, like, if you keep trying, you will eventually, again, get to a genetically normal embryo. Like, that's how I think this is going to work. And he's just, like, bouncing off the walls, so happy and positive. And, like, I'm like, I don't know how to interpret this kind of behavior from someone, I mean, very empathetic and kind and all of that, but just I left and Mark was like, oh, babe, you can get pregnant. Like, people in that place dream of getting pregnant, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I can get
Yeah.
pregnant, but can I stay pregnant?
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so we kind of talked through the options, and our insurance actually had a like separate part that would cover fertility treatments. And so this doctor talked to us and he's like, the only way to guarantee that it's genetically normal is if you do IVF. So we kind of wrestled with that idea, and the idea of having to sit and intentionally make those kind of decisions about if I want to get pregnant again, if I want to do IVF, felt like so much. And I was fighting against it
Mhm.
so hard because what I wanted was to accidentally get pregnant and the decision be made
Just
for
have a
me.
baby, right? Yeah, just have a baby. Like, yeah.
And but that wasn't, the options that I was given. And so we kind of got to a place where we're like, okay, we'll do it. And then like a week before I was going to start around when that doctor left. And so I had to meet the new doctor, which delayed it a couple of cycles. And then it's going to go into the summertime where my kids are going to be home from school all the time. And if anybody who's gone through IVF, like you have to drop everything and go to a million appointments where they're going to scan you a lot. And it's all the setup. So we were like, okay, we're putting it off till after the summer. And we're going to just try this summer. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't work, then in the fall when the boys are back in school, we'll do IVF stuff. And in June I got pregnant with Teddy, my last rainbow. So, yeah.
What was that like for you guys to find out?
I think I was stuck in freeze probably for a whole lot of it. Didn't believe it for a whole lot of it. I am actually very thankful that we were with the fertility clinic because even though the baby was conceived without fertility treatments, they still monitored me through the first 10 weeks. And so I got lots of blood work. They were really close. I got a scan every week going in, and it was what I needed in those moments. I got a little bit more hormonal support that I hadn't had in previous pregnancies. That to me, it just like it felt good doing something. Like I was like, I need to do something different. And before, like after Gabe, when we were trying again with the MFM and my OB, I'd added in Lovenox shots because we didn't know if I had some kind of blood clotting thing. And so I'd done that for the trisomy pregnancy and it still didn't work. But obviously like that wouldn't affect that, you know? So I kept doing the Lovenox, but like just like that, it felt like every day it was something I could do that could control something, you know? Like I don't want to give myself a shot every day, but I want to do something to make this baby stay alive.
Totally. It was honestly because I did shots too with my last pregnancy, and it's just like I think every shot you're doing, you're like, oh, I'm doing something different. I'm like, this is actively like helping my baby, and that in itself is like, who cares about the shot? Like I
Yeah.
got over the needle really fast because it just felt good to do something different, right? That might be helpful. So
Yes, which I think I've seen you post on your Instagram about having your jar of injectors. I still have mine.
mm,
Can't get rid of them.
no, I don't think I could ever. I don't know if I could ever get rid of them because I'm like, those brought my baby here. Like,
Yeah.
right?
What's funny is like my husband is terrified of needles, like terrified. So they're also you can't see them through the plastic container, you know. So and I laugh. We
hmm
laugh about it a lot about how he could never, those videos like your husband could never give birth. I'm like he could never.
But it's just so funny because you're like, you never know what you're actually capable of doing until you don't really have a choice
Yeah.
or like this is your best choice. Like there's so many things that I find that a lot of moms thought that they could never do.
Yes.
They do so graciously and eagerly if it meant to get to their baby, right?
Yeah.
So what did that pregnancy look like? So obviously you were on injections.
hmm
What did that pregnancy look like with Teddy?
I was pretty terrified the whole time.
hmm
I became a pro at determining what or wouldn't be jinxes.
Mm.
I could look something in the face and be like, I can't do that. That means something bad, or I see the sign that something's wrong, and I know from all of my years of trauma therapy, it is. I logically know It's my brain trying to make sense. Like, human beings are programmed for our brains to see patterns so that we understand what to do and not to do. It's how we evolved. It's how we've survived all these years. Does not help when you are experiencing a pregnancy after loss. Like, not helpful at all. And so, in the same way that when I was grieving, I was intentionally looking for glimmers to meet my grief, to meet the waves of grief I was feeling, I started intentionally looking for the good signs to meet the waves of fear. Like, that's what the jinxes were, you know? And so I just, anytime I would see something happy, I would be like, that's Gabe telling me it's going to be good. That's him telling me he's here with me. I had a butterfly land on my head. Like, I know that's Gabe, you know, like all of these things that just brought me some level of comfort that things were going to be fine. And with Teddy, I had an anterior placenta. That's the one on the outside, right?
Yeah, on the front. So it blocks kind of your baby and your tummy. Like, it's a barrier between your, usually your placenta's at the back. So for the placenta to be at the front, it could be like in the way of like being able to feel your baby's kicks. That's the easiest way I can describe it.
Yeah. It was pretty awful. Like, I was, like, I have felt 3 other babies move in me. Like, I know what kicks feel like, and I'm kind of feeling them, but they also don't feel super strong. And it was pretty terrifying, I think. And even like when I was pregnant with Gabe and then losing Gabe, it really made me question my own sanity, because there's so many times I thought I felt movement that the doctor said, like, oh, he's probably already gone. And then even after I had Gabe, I had phantom kicks for years. Like, even like the start of the pregnancy, I would think I was feeling him move, you know? And I know it's like lots of different parts of your body moving around and all of that, but like my brain wasn't accepting what was a kick versus what was something else. And so having the anterior placenta, I think I just had to like really even more so lean into myself, to trust myself that I put a little tally mark. I think I felt a kick. That must, like, I have to trust that. I can't retroactively question that. I can only look at what's in front of me. And so that pregnancy too, we also didn't tell a whole lot of people. I couldn't say the word pregnant. It was too scary to me. Basically, the only people that knew were people we saw in person, and when they would be like, oh, and we'd be like, yeah. Told our parents, close to 20 weeks. I really wanted to get through the anatomy scan before I felt safe talking to people about it. But then I had, my handful of moms who had experienced loss that I could text and just be like, I'm doing this, like, tell me I'm not crazy, and my friend Julie, who I probably texted every day, and would go into the MFM whenever I needed and get extra scans and all of that. My neighbor, my best friend April, who should just be like, come on walks. And it was great. She's just this person who could like get me out and get me out of my head and just focus on movement, joyful movement, and all of that. But then I also, somewhere around 20 weeks when I let myself accept, this baby is coming. And in those moments, it wasn't even like I could accept that he was coming alive, but I knew like he would be birthed, at that point. And we're thinking about all this stuff. I could never envision the birth. The doctor was asking, like, do you want another VBAC? You did great with your last VBAC. And I was like, I don't even want to sign the papers. I don't know. I want to do whatever I need to do. And honestly, the thought of, I even asked her, I was like, once I hit 36 weeks, can we just, like, if I said yes to a C-section, would you do it then? And she's like, Bethany, we're not talking about that now. Like, I know you need all the answers and you need to see what it looks like, but we're not in a place where we can talk about that. I promise, we'll be on top of it as best we can. And then somewhere around Thanksgiving, which I was 26-ish weeks, something like that, I was like, I've been taking my blood pressure. And I remembered with Jack, I had like full logs of blood pressure. And so I took my blood pressure and I put the cuff on my hand and it kept going. And when your blood pressure is really high, it like squeezes harder. And I'm like, oh, we're doing this again. And I think my blood pressure was like 140 or something. And normally my blood pressure is really low. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
okay. Like it's
So
happening.
like 140 might not be like anything to bat an eye at for people that have like 120 over
Mm-hmm.
80 blood pressure. Because like, okay, it's marginally high. We might want to keep an eye on it. But someone who has low blood pressure, that's a deviation from your normal, right? So you would know.
Yes.
Hmm.
So I immediately call the MFM and like on the home line. And he's like, just come in at 7 a.m. tomorrow before my patients come in. We'll look at you. Did some extra scans with him. And it was just like, hey, you're just, there's nothing you can do to get yourself out of preeclampsia if you're getting there. We're just going to monitor and
Hmm.
monitor more. You can start doing NSTs when you do. And so went into my doctor more, did triage a couple of different times. And then at 30 weeks, 30 weeks, I went in and she was like, Bethany, it's time for you to go in the hospital. Like, I feel better with you in the hospital than I feel with you at home. And I had come in prepared for that because I knew I'd already been in triage 2 different times before this appointment with blood pressures at home over the threshold of like 160 over 110. And so I go in and she's like, yeah, you're going to be checked into the hospital. So at 30 weeks, I checked into the hospital. It was the middle of December with the goal of keeping the baby in until 34 weeks if things stabilized. And did all the things, did the magnesium drip, which is awful. Any other pre mamas or other people that have to have that, did all of those things. And probably the hardest part of all of that was being in the hospital through the holidays. Like, I missed my 4-year-old's birthday and his Christmas program at preschool. And my kids had to come celebrate Christmas with me at the hospital. Like,
Yeah,
this is
that's
just
tough.
not something you want to do. And I'm very much of two minds of this period of time because so much of me, when she told me I was checking into the hospital, felt so much relief.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
I felt like I had given it and given Teddy, given all my babies as much as I had to give. And I was out. I was depleted. I had nothing left to give. And Teddy was like, you know what? I've got you. Like, I'll get it. We'll be in the hospital. We'll be here. They'll be checking on me. Like, you can
You
stand.
don't have to be so like hyper vigilant. Like we got you.
Like, you can
Yeah.
stand down was kind of
Hmm.
emotionally how I felt. But then just, being split and wanting to stay with my big boys and I couldn't. And, but, things stabled out. Eventually, my numbers didn't look great. And so I wound up delivering him at 33 and 3, which was New Year's Eve. And we had opted to just do a repeat section again because I had the negative experience of trying to induce a vaginal labor with a pre-E 33 weeker before. I was like, we're not doing that with my history of hemorrhaging and everything. We're just going to do a repeat section. And as hard as that was too, from the birth trauma perspective, it was so much different this time,
Hmm.
and I had my anesthesiologist friend, just kept me as calm as he could. And, you know, Teddy was born and, and he was okay. And then I was okay, and we kept waiting for the other shoe to fall and it didn't. And I was okay. And things were just okay. And even then I still didn't feel like, oh, we made it. And then Teddy had a 28-day NICU stay, which was so hard. He was healthy and fine and great in the NICU. And I'm so thankful. Like, all the NICU nurses and doctors are just angels. And this is my second time doing NICU. I knew what to expect for him specifically, his gestation and what we were looking at. But it felt harder this time because of the older boys at home. I couldn't just spend as much time as I wanted at the NICU. We were an hour away from the hospital because we were at that high-risk hospital, and so we would drop the kids off for school in the morning, and then we would drive an hour to the hospital, and then we would get 3 hours at the hospital, and we'd have to drive back home, and that was it. I was getting to see my baby for 3 hours a day. Um, And it was incredibly hard, and the boys just wanted their brother home, and I wanted their brother home, but I also wanted him to be as safe as he could, so I didn't want him to come home early. And, just all of the things you feel. And the day he got released from the hospital, we have him loaded up. We're walking out of the hospital, and my doula that I had happened to be at the hospital for another birth with another client that day. She meets us at the door, and I just lost it. I'm like crying. I like run to her. I'm like collapsing in her arms because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm leaving with a live baby. He's
Mhm.
alive. And it was for the first time that I really let myself realize, like, oh, like I think we did it.
Mhm. Mhm. You did do it.
Yeah.
You did do it. That must have been, and I've never experienced an EQ, but I know that leaving and that drive home is really, really a powerful experience.
I always describe it for Bowen, for my first, I always said it was the strongest Patronus memory to date, was them telling me, "You can take your
Mm.
baby home." Um,
Mhm.
just forever
The best
thankful.
words.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Wow, my friend, you have been through a journey and you got your baby. Wow. Like after all, after everything. I would be interested to hear how, now that you have your three boys in your arms at home, how you guys keep Gabe in your lives, a part of your family. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. So, every year on his day, I have a hard time calling it his birthday,
Hmm.
um, and finally I just settled on, like, it's Gabe's day. That's what we call it. It's what resonates with us. So on his day every year, the day that he left me, March 31st, we just have Gabe's Day, and we do something special. The first year, we colored pictures, and I sent the coloring sheet to, friends and family that had known about him and asked for them to, like, send the coloring pictures back. And I have a little book and a little picture book of all the Gabe's Day pictures that people colored for us that I now have with his box that I can go and look at. Um, and we just, do something that day to celebrate him, whether it's coloring rocks or whatnot. And the boys will talk about Gabe, and now Jack is older. He's 4.5 now, which was how old Bowen was. And so there's a lot of, questions about life and death and where he is. And I think his death, you know, like deaths do for so many of us, really make us question what we think is going on and what happens. And I just, hold on to his memory in my heart. Like that's where I know his memory lives for sure, is in my heart. And we talk about how we can love people in our heart even if we don't get to love them in our lives. And so our boys will talk about him some. And every after we brought Teddy home, Jack would say a couple of times, like, I wish we got to bring Gabe home, or why couldn't Gabe come home too? And I'll just say, like, I really, really wish that too, you know? And I think a lot about Bowen because he really has lived through so much, his own
Hmm.
traumatic entrance into the world, and a lot of OT and PT to physically help him hit milestones that he needed to, and all this kind of stuff that I know, like, they don't remember from being born. But then living through all the pregnancy losses and Gabe's loss and parents who, like, we were doing our best, but I it's not lost on me that, like, they know that something's going on, And what I tell myself is that the hope is that I'm raising tiny humans that will grow up to be emotionally intelligent adults, that will know it's okay to talk about people who've died, and it's okay to, years later, ask someone what they love about the person that they died, or to be able to say, I experienced this, or my mom experienced this, or whatever, and I know that they meant a lot to you, and to just be okay sitting in the sadness. And that's one thing my boys, they will sit in the sadness. Like, they will give you hugs and tell you it's okay to be sad, mommy, it's okay. And if anything, hopefully that means something.
Well, they're your mirror, or you're their mirror, right? So they're watching you and they're learning all of that from witnessing you and how you're handling it and how you're honoring, and continuing to honor Gabe and be honest. Like I always think that honesty is always, the best policy, right? And it's true. It is okay to be sad and it is okay to talk about the people in our hearts. And I've no doubt that your boys are going to grow up being more empathetic and emotional and, just have a different level of humanness as they grow up into men, right? So, and that's because of you and what you're modeling for them. And I think that's so beautiful that they get to witness you like that. So, yeah. Well, Bethany, I think that is a really beautiful place to wrap up today. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your journey. You've been on a journey, and I'm so inspired by your courage and your go-getterness and that fierce mama energy that you have that you needed to, bring Teddy home. And I think a lot of listeners who are tuning in today are going to feel so validated and seen by listening to your story. And just like that mom, I think about just how that mom messaged you and gave you permission for the choices you needed to, impossible choices you needed to make. And I think there's a lot of women that are going to feel that from you and from listening to you today. So I just want to thank you so much for being that voice for them.
Thank you. Thanks for doing all of this, giving everybody, some hope, some glimmers, bringing some glimmers in places where they can see both at the same time,
I love that. Notice the glimmers. That's going to stick with me, and I hope that sticks with the listeners as well who tuned in today.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to connect more, Instagram is where I hang out most, so come join me in a beautiful community of lost moms for pregnancy after loss education, real-life grief talk, and deep solidarity. You can find me at the.doula.life and at the Rainbow Connection Podcast. And remember, you are never alone. I'll see you in the next episode.